Hello.
Carrie Chow, joined by ESPNW's trifecta. Kate Fagan.
What's up?
Jane McManus, Sarah Spain. You guys okay with the superfecta? I just want to be
he just invited himself in.
I totally just want to be a part of the crew.
Yeah.
I see squad goals all over the place.
Right.
I'm like, I could be a part of this.
You could be in our squad.
Kate's looking at me like, nah, yo.
It's a trial run. We'll see.
Okay.
We'll see. Get a tryout.
That's all I asked for.
Yeah.
That's all I asked for. All right, coming up on the show, we're going to talk about where's Kevin Durant going. In fact, we're going to do a little role play to determine the best scenario for KD. But first, we're talking Lux, Bucks, no whammies, big bucks, no whammies, something like that. The Colts signed their quarterback to the biggest contract in NFL history, $140 million over 6 years, includes a guaranteed $87 million, which is actually $22 million more than the previous high of $65 for both Eli Manning and Phillip Rivers. That said, did he leave money on the table? Kate, we'll start with you. What do you make of the deal?
Honestly, I thought the deal was a missed opportunity. And I think it's almost impossible, looking at those numbers, to feel like I believe that that's what I was going to say when I sat down today. But there are rare moments in player, and not just singular player, but players in general, moments in contract history where a single player has the opportunity to set a standard that then elevates the contract level that other guys may get in the future. The one in the NBA, in a lot of ways, was Kevin Garnett when he was with the Timberwolves. He signed that $120+ million 7-year deal that the owners were like, man, is this where we're headed? These long-term guaranteed contract deals. Luck had that kind of place. He had the Colts. He was their QB. He was there. He had all of the leverage in this. And so when I say that it was a missed opportunity, I think he could have been the first guy in the NFL to get a fully guaranteed contract. Now think about this number. In the last 3 years, the NFL salary cap percentage has risen 26%. QB salaries have only risen 5.9%.
Including Luck's deal. That is including his deal. So that's not something that's been adjusted or changed much based on this because, again, like you said, he didn't take that much of a leap. The rest of the league is taking that giant jump, and the salary cap is going up by that much, but quarterbacks are not adjusting in accordance. And the reason that most people say is because the leadership position of being an NFL quarterback, the expectation is that you don't put your team at a default by demanding more. So you look at a guy like Darrelle Revis. He is 100% willing to be a paid mercenary. Send me where you will, just give me all of the money. Will that money take away from the team filling all the roster spots around me? I don't care, I'm gonna get mine, right? And people kind of, it rubs them the wrong way with Revis, but then again, they're like, kind of doing the right thing. Look at him go get his. That doesn't work with quarterbacks. You're expected to be leadered on the field and also off the field, and to be able to say the likelihood of your team succeeding will benefit by you getting your money, but not that much, not pushing the envelope the way that, as you said, Luck absolutely could have. So what we tend to do with contracts is to look at stuff like, look how many records he set, most guaranteed money, most yearly salary, most total money. How could anyone complain about a deal like that? And then you break it down, as Kate did, and you say, he could have gotten more, a lot more. And now there's guys like Drew Brees and Kirk Cousins who are going to come up after this year who were really hoping that he would establish a massive sea change, and he didn't.
Well, if you talk to agents around the league and you say to them, you know, why, out of all the professional sports we have, NFL players who are taking a beating every single week, play intense games, 100% injury rate, why don't they get guaranteed money when you have baseball players and football players who do? And the reason they say is because the agents and the players don't push for them when they have the leverage. So this may have been a case for that. But then, would Andrew Luck be the right guy? Just because look at last year what happened. He played 7 games. He had the lowest completion percentage in the league, 55%, something like that. He's had 12 postseason interceptions, 6 of those against the Patriots. But still, you know, he didn't have a great year last year. And so when you're coming up on your contract year, to have that the year where you have and, you know, obviously not his fault, but a lacerated kidney and some other health issues that keep you out for the rest of the season, does that put him in the best position to be able to bargain a fully guaranteed deal?
He was absolutely in the best position because he was the quarterback of a Colts team that didn't have other options, and coming off of 3 years where his QBR is through the roof and has established himself as one of the premier quarterbacks in the league. And in addition, we're coming off of an offseason where all we did was look at quarterbacks who were unproven, getting all kinds of money, and you thought to yourself, this quarterback who is proven, even if he's coming off of a subpar year, he should be getting, and he should be stretching the market so that, Sarah, as you mentioned, other quarterbacks are like, look, I know I can't get Andrew Luck money, but look, I can come here at this level, and they're still getting more money than they should have, and then they could have gotten. And I think we're talking so much about QBs, but it's not just about QBs. It's not just about pushing the market for like a handful of guys. It's about all NFL players consistently playing by some code, an unwritten rule in the NFL because of the nature of their game, which we all get, which is this team first, we're a collective, and that leaves them behind in all of this collective bargaining and pushing forward, which should be probably the one sport with guaranteed money, is pretty much the only sport without guaranteed money.
Well, and you look at the way football works, there are so many more pieces that have to come into play. So you understand in a way the idea that if you're LeBron James, there's not a lot of room around you that needs to be filled in order for your team to be successful. You, as one of 5 starters, can have a tremendous impact on a team. The only position in football that has anywhere near that sort of relevance in football is the quarterback. That's not to say that you don't need good defensive players or other offensive weapons, but the only position that has anywhere near the import of one of the 5 starters in the NBA is a quarterback. And that's why, while you understand their need to make sure that there's enough money to go around to fill a roster, you also understand that they are in a very unique position to say, good luck finding someone else. Because ask any number of teams around the league how difficult it is to build a team without the right quarterback.
Well, all you have to do is look at the top 15 paid players in the NFL, and all but 3 of them are quarterbacks, and the other 3 are defensive tackles.
But the NFL owners could live all day on what we heard as guys retired, which was, we just got another one to replace them. And as you said, we have this belief, and part of it is statistically backed up, that NFL players have smaller influence on a game than an NBA player has. But this rhetoric that constantly goes around, which is, there's just another guy in line to fill your spot. There are certain players where there isn't just another guy in line.
Ask that guy with the Cleveland Browns jersey.
Exactly.
It's got the names going down to the floor.
But that's
when you have these moments,
shouldn't have been.
When you are one of those guys, and there aren't a dozen others waiting to take your seat in line, well, then you have to capitalize to the absolute maximum degree. And you might think to yourself, this is selfish, but you have to think to yourself, that you have to stretch it. Because you have to move the NFL Players Association forward about what they should all expect.
Well, and what Jane said is spot on about it being a tough year for him to do that. In the first 3 years of his contract, it would have been easy to swagger into a room and just be like, hey, what are you going to tell me? Like, I am the future of the league.
Right.
Last year, besides the injury, wasn't playing up to snuff. But he's still, beyond the field stats, exactly the guy you want to put the reins of your franchise in, right? So we're mostly talking about football ability, but if you want to find a guy that you want to put your trust in, brains-wise, football brains-wise, especially a team like the Colts, who are coming off a Peyton Manning era, where the expectation for what the quarterback can do intellectually in order to lead your team is so high that following that up with a guy like Andrew Luck is the best case scenario, assuming that last year was an aberration.
And there aren't enough seats to go around, right, with the quarterbacks. You have more seats than you have really solid quarterbacks to fill them.
By a lot.
I simply look at the New York Jets.
Oh, wow.
For 8 years.
Bringing up the Jets.
Well, I know, exactly. Who are like,
Jane, hey, you're not on that beat anymore.
I know, but it's always it's a great example for so many situations. Yeah. And they're saying, well, maybe we could go with Geno Smith. Yeah, I mean, really? Okay, but so to Andrew Luck, that's a great problem to have.
Will Luck live up to the precedents that Manning set in Indianapolis?
I mean,
that's a big ask.
He already has proven himself. He already has proven himself as the Colts as a premier quarterback. If you're talking about, but is he going to bring 2 titles in the next 2 years
to Indianapolis during his tenure? That's the ultimate question.
That's living up to it. That's the only way
Did he
to live
already
up
do
to
that,
it.
Kate?
We already look at Sarah jumping in, running anything possible. We talk so much about the only thing is titles, and I get that we need titles because otherwise, like, what are we playing the game for? I don't want to be Sarah Spain here on Around the Horn being like, you want to give everybody a cookie? But you can't look at Andrew Luck and say that at this point in his career, he hasn't established himself as capable of it, given that the Colts surround him with the kind of players they surrounded Peyton Manning with.
Right, but at this point, Andrew Luck could continue his downward turn from last season. I don't think that's going to happen, but hypothetically, he could start a downward turn from last season, and what you'd have to go by is 3 spectacular seasons that he progressed in wins and the like how far he took the team, but none of it added up to a championship, and it's 3 years of lost potential if it doesn't keep going up. So his question is a valid one because the expectations are high in a city like Indy that's coming off Manning.
And it's also about how he comes off of injury. I mean, he had a lacerated kidney, right? Like, this isn't a normal football injury. We've seen quarterbacks who get injured, have a major injury, and they can be a little bit skittish in the pocket coming back out of that. And you just don't know how he's going to respond. So to be able to say, oh, yeah, you know, he's back where he was 2 years ago, and we're expecting him to build off of that, I think you got to see how he takes the field, how he is back there, how comfortable he gets. I mean,
one thing I do like is that the Colts have started to try to shore up the offensive line, because to me, one of the most ridiculous things an NFL team can do is spend all of their money on a quarterback and forget any guys to protect him. Just ask the Chicago Bears when they
got to bring up Chicago over.
Right. I always like, you're the Jag. Come on. Oh, my God. You guys were talking about quarterbacks underperforming or getting stuck with someone that you overpaid. I think this is relevant.
Well, Jets
but
in
they
Chicago.
went and they spent all their money on Jay Cutler, and then they didn't have anyone on the offensive line. There was that one Giants game. He got sacked 10 times in one game and was hobbled around and couldn't finish seasons. And what are we doing wrong? Well, I think it's pretty obvious. So I like at least that if the Colts are going to spend this money, which could have been even more, they are at least looking to shore up the offensive line.
Well, they got
as well.
Ryan Kelly in the draft this year. I mean, and that's the problem. Part of the problem with for Luck stats last year is that he was pressured in 33% of dropbacks. That's a lot, you know? You're not going to have great numbers coming out of that.
You guys brought up both Drew Brees and Kirk Cousins possibly looking at this deal and thinking about themselves, of course, their contracts. Are around the league, are they disappointed at this deal? Are they thinking 100% like, man, we could be making so much more?
I would think that they are, the agents are, the NFL Players Association are. I mean, disappointed is
everyone
such a
but
loaded.
The owners.
Yeah, the owners, and I'm certain we've talked about Andrew Luck here and shoring up that offensive line. Obviously, taking a little less money if it's going to offensive linemen, and you're coming off a year where you're injured, does make sense. But if you look at it big picture wise, and you go around the NFL, and you're one of those players who's coming up, and you want to be able to say, even if your numbers aren't as great as Luck, if he had pushed it even higher, you're getting more money. I think you're going to see a lot of players disappointed at the amount of money that he left on the table.
Because it's such an easy argument to make, right? You are almost anyone in the league with the exception of like maybe 3 or 4 players, and you go to your front office and you say, I demand this, and they say, oh, that's more than Andrew Luck. Are you kidding? You think you're better than Andrew Luck? Let's just look at the stats. Let's break it. You know what I mean? And it's so easy. It's not fair necessarily, but it's an easy way to get out of having to take that next step up.
But it's not just quarterbacks. I mean, now you have every position. I mean, once you have one fully guaranteed contract, you can be getting $1 million a year and say, look, I want that deal fully guaranteed. But until you have somebody who has that money,
needs to
you can't do that.
And this was a perfect opportunity.
Right. So it's not going to, you know, the trickle-down benefits of the guaranteed contract.